Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. I see some known faces and some that I don't know yet, and I'm just really happy that everybody wants to be here. Thanks for doing this, and thank you, Eric. So before we begin, I would like to just quickly say that UX Copenhagen has a code of conduct that we will, of course, be following. I want the UX Copenhagen stage to be a place where we can hear different voices and that people are in a safe space. So, you know, we will not tolerate any kinds of harassment or discrimination. You can read the code of conduct on the UX Copenhagen homepage. And another side note that I already mentioned for Eric is that Danes are pretty straightforward and can be very blunt. So if there's something that the speaker is uncomfortable with, which there shouldn't be, because I mean, there's no harm meant. That's just basically what I'm trying to say, is that sometimes I'm just like, well, I blurt out things without, you know, thinking too much about them and without thinking too much about American culture, for example, because now I've lived here for 30 years, so I'm very Danish. So the background for these talks is basically that for a long time, I've been thinking about, you know, doing a podcast or some kind of something, and I never really found the time. And then I think it was last year, I had a speaker and I met this lady named Jen Goertzen, and Jen Goertzen. And she was like, well, I'll help you. And she like basically set up a script and, you know, just really pushed me to start doing these things. So the idea is that I have all these potential speakers that want to come on stage, and the first initial interview or chat that I have with these people is always really, really super interesting and goes all sorts of places. And I've often wished that I had recorded the talk beforehand or after the talk, right? So that's basically what this is. It's just a very informal chat with a potential speaker. And Eric and I met 5 years ago, where I launched a design conference here in Copenhagen, and he was on stage. And there's actually several pointers that you had in that talk that I still remember. Like, for example, never launch a product and then go to lunch. There's like some kind of big crisis about that. But you know, I mean, you just really made an impression on me, and we've seen each other several times. You and your wife and me and my husband have met whenever you've been in Copenhagen. So I'm very proud to call you my friend. And Eric and I have been talking about this talk for a long time, where I'll let him get into the whole topic of the story, but we've been trying to get this story to stage for at least 2 years, right? Maybe even more, because I remember we were trying to get you to Copenhagen in 2018, and then I did the whole Vilnius, Lithuania thing that failed badly, but that's a whole different talk. And we were going to have, so hopefully next year we can invite you to, I don't know if it's going to be, you know, online or in Copenhagen, but we can hopefully invite you to stage. So this is going to be like a small chat about what your potential talk would be about. And do you want to take it from here?
Sure, yeah.
And then I will shut up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You know, great to be here. Thanks for the invite. This really came about because I brought this up to, and I'm going to try to pronunciate your name properly. So it's Hethla, right? Close?
That's very close. That's really good.
I've been trying. You know, it's, I guess as part of this talk, it's important to me to pronounce people's names properly. Some of, you know, I think that I grew up in Hawaii and maybe probably baked into being Hawaiian and living in a place where tourists come and butcher the language. It's just always been a thing that's important to me to try to pronounce someone's name properly. I know that you're okay with people saying Helen, and I usually say Helen, but I was trying to learn to say it properly. So, this talk really came about as I was reflecting on myself and privilege and my privilege within technology. And I thought, I wonder how I can make a talk about this and make something that would, you know, be useful and helpful to people in the tech culture. So I reached out to Helen. I'll say it that way instead of continue to butcher it. We'll have to have more practice on that. And so I just walked her through the story. And so here's the sort of story I tell, that I had this light bulb realization that in technology today, and maybe this is only for companies that have sort of progressive thought or care about diversity, but I had this realization that I might actually be the single most privileged classification of person in technology, being a white presenting, biracial, cis, I don't know if you say it cis or just CIS, gendered man in technology, in that I have this situation that I can walk through where I can say, there's a job that comes up, I apply for it, recruiter sees Eric Muntz, and they see that name and they picture what Eric Muntz looks like in their head. They sort of read some background. They probably picture based on the background, they probably picture a white man who's maybe losing his hair because it's been so long. I show up to the interview, I open the door, and I look exactly like they thought I would look like. I speak exactly the way they thought I would speak. The job is mine to lose, really, at this point. I don't have a background in computer science, but as a white appearing man in technology, that's pretty normal, pretty well accepted. I have a degree in math, so in some circles that's probably like, ooh, extra smart. So I land the job and I negotiate as a white man, which, as someone who has seen negotiations and been through negotiations, I know that that's an advantaged position. I show up and, I bring pictures of wife and 2 kids. We even have a Labrador Retriever Collie mix. Like, we don't have a white picket fence, but we should, right? And so, it's just acceptance all the way down, right? And I never have to explain why I belong. I never have to, fight for being treated as equally or as respectfully as anyone else. And then they find out that I'm biracial because I don't look biracial. My mom is black, my dad is white. And what probably happens is my mom or my stepdad, who's basically a father, come to visit me at the office because they live in Atlanta. And it's like, who's that? Well, that's my mom. And then we have a conversation, right, about my background. And except for that 10-second period where I get to watch someone replay every interaction they've had with me and make sure they didn't say anything sort of dicey. And to be fair, it's not everyone, but it has happened enough times that I know that look. And then when they're proud of themselves, then the company gets diversity numbers padded, right? And I don't mean that in any sort of, ill way toward people, that they have any sort of nefarious ideas or thoughts there, but they get to have a black friend, which wasn't how it was set up, obviously, because looking at me, they thought one specific thing. So it's privilege on the front end, and then it's privilege on the back end. And it just was like, wow, that's a lot. And I just really didn't know what to do with it. So I reached out to Helen and said, hey, maybe we should do something with this. And, COVID and everything else happened. And I'm still really not sure exactly what I would make the conference talk. I mean, I've got that intro I just did, but I'm not really sure where I go from here, right? I think it's going to be fun to have a discussion about it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like the way this has played out, that now you can ask me some questions or other people can ask some questions and we can just have a dialogue. I want to make sure that I state up front, though, that I'm a technology leader. I'm not a diversity and inclusion leader. I have not done psychological studies. I have not read psychological studies. I do not feel like I'm an expert on this. I know about my experience, and I know about the experience of a few others and my family, and I can reflect upon that. For me, it's been an extremely unique situation to live the world as a white man. And then every time as growing up, I grew up with my mom. She was a single mom. And when she remarried a black man. So when I went home, I was in a black home. And then I would go out in the world and be a white guy. And then I'd open the door to home and close the door to home, and I was in a black home. So it was interesting, as you can imagine, in American culture. So I just want to make sure I state up front that I don't want to portray myself as having a ton of answers, because I don't think I do.
You said that, okay, so people meet your mom and then they're like, wait, you're Black. And then all of a sudden you're like the token Black person, right, in the company. And you say that's a privilege? Are you serious?
Yeah, I think it can be.
Okay.
I think it can then be, again, I don't want to paint any sort of nefarious logic or reasoning on folks, but especially in where I am now and the level that I am in a particular company, it can be advantageous. It can be like, well, yeah, now you're in an extra protected class, and there's certain maybe doors that would open specifically for me, right? Like, oh, well, let's prop up that we're diverse because this person is here to say a thing, which feels really just not genuine to me to go and be that face, because let's say I walk out and say, oh, we're going to hear from the Black leader at MailChimp. Yeah. And I walk on stage, people are going to go, I was a member last year of an organization called Dev Color. One of my squad mates from last year is here. And it was pretty tough for me to walk into that room. Dev Color is an organization for Black engineers. And to be in the organization, you have to both want career advancement and want to help others with career advancement. And I was in that situation. And like I said, I feel Black and have a shared experience. But I walk into a room and then I have to explain a little bit, right?
Right.
So it gets a little dicey. But yeah, I actually do think in some ways it adds to my specific privilege. I'm not sure that that's true for everybody else, but it does for me. Right.
I'd love to hear that from other voices also, if it's an advantage sometimes, because sometimes I'm a mechanical engineer, right? So there are very few girls, and it was tough as hell for me to try to get through school and all that and get a job and all these things. That is a complete different talk as well. But, it's also a huge advantage because, everybody helped me. Everybody liked me because I was a girl, right? So I don't know. So anyway, I should tell people that we are doing questions on sli.do. And I can see that we've got, okay, Bailey, thank you very much. And the code for our Slido for the event is 65546. So people can post their questions on there. And we have a bunch of people looking at Slido for me. Not sure. Oh yeah, we've got one question here. Here we go. Could you tell us maybe both a positive and a negative experience of having an ally in the workplace?
Positive and negative experience of having an ally in the workplace. Is that what the question is?
Ally, yes, not ally.
Yeah. Well, my go-to, hi doggo, my go-to positive experience of having an ally is a huge cheat because it's my stepfather, and he's a software entrepreneur. He married my mom when I was a high school kid, and I was like disgruntled youth. I was, punk rock kid. I had really curly hair and I grew it out really, really big, and I dyed it all kinds of crazy colors. We're talking about the early 90s to age myself a little bit. He was like, hey, you're going to come to work with me. I couldn't afford college. And so what I would do was go to college for a quarter. At the time we're on quarters, which is 3 months in American schooling. So I'd go for 3 months and then I'd go home for 3 months. And I was working like 4 jobs. And he said, you know what, you can make the same amount of money working for me and you can learn a skill, which he kept saying you need to learn Unix. And I always think of like Jurassic Park where they're like, Unix, I know this. But he kept being like, you need to learn Unix. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay. So he takes me to work, and, I saw a side of him I'd never seen, right? I saw this super, super on it professional. I knew he was super smart, but he was just very serious and on it. And, we roll in the first day in his car, and he looks over at me, and he's like, pull your pants up and stand up straight. And I was like, whoa, this is like new dad, right? But he really opened a bunch of doors. And then the people who worked for him also opened a bunch of doors. And, the interesting thing for me there is I was the boss's kid. And the only reason I got the job is because I was the boss's kid. And all I wanted was for people to forget that. And I think that that's the closest that I can come to having experienced what it was like for you as a mechanical engineer, right? For a woman in technology, or someone, in an underrepresented group that is in a bit of a different position than I am, that, they just probably just want people to forget that and just be colleagues.
Yeah.
And so I worked really, really, really hard against that. Oftentimes he'd be waiting for me to drive home, because I'd be like, no, I got to do this one last thing, because I wanted everybody to know that I was there to work, not there to be the boss's kid. So I had tons of positive experiences from that. I started out in tech support, which meant that I burned discs and glued printouts of the company's logo onto the discs.
Yes.
And I actually learned how to script some of those things while I was there. And some of the programmers who saw me doing that took me under their wing and were like, hey, you can write scripts, you can learn to write code. And taught me a language called C, which felt really hard at the time, but they really just were very patient, took me under their wing. And I wouldn't have my career without him taking me to work, and those people sort of helped me out. I can't really think of bad experiences with Ally. I can think of bad experiences with colleagues in general, specifically around race. And I have called myself the secret agent a few times. You can imagine, based on that term, why. Because I will tend to be in a room of people who think they're in a room of like people, and will say or do pretty horrible things. I had a colleague a very long time ago, and it was, a peer colleague who joked about how excited he was to have the weekend off for Fartin' Luther King Day. And it just was like, oh my gosh, did you actually just, whoa, you said that out loud? And to me? Yeah. The thing that happens is I still don't really know how to react, right? I still am like, okay, do I knowledge bomb this person? Probably not going to change their mind. No. Do I get really shouty and yelly? That's what I did when I was younger. At that moment, I froze up and just was like, oh, yeah, okay. And then, sat deflated, sort of staring at my screen for the rest of the day.
Right. Did you ever say anything to him again?
I mean, I said work things to him again, because I had to work with him for however long, but never anything about that, or really anything in a mostly friendly manner. I was probably in sort of fear of him saying something again every time I saw him after that. So I just was kind of like tense and on edge.
Sometimes the best thing to do is just stay away from people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I've got another question. I noticed just a couple of men in the audience. What are your thoughts on that? Do you notice a difference in attention from women versus men on this topic? That's interesting.
That is an interesting question. I don't know that I do anecdotally. I've been at MailChimp for a very long time, and MailChimp's culture, I think, is really open and unique and great around this. And a lot of the men I work with a senior director named Mark, who's just unbelievably phenomenal on this topic and most topics in general. and a director named Homer that I don't think a whole lot of people know, who's just super, super good about this. So maybe I'm a little bit spoiled on it. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder what it says that there's. I mean, I'm looking around, and yeah, whoever made that comment was very observant. I didn't notice it myself, but there are a lot of women on this call and not a lot of men. That's interesting. Hey, there's a man.
Oh my dog.
What video on?
To be fair, I now count 4 men. I only counted 2, apart from you, when I made the comment. But still, it's there's an imbalance here. There seems to be an imbalance, and I'm wondering whether women identify more easily with, being treated with bias because we're women, because we get treated with bias all the time. And I mean, I'm Danish, so it's not that bad in Denmark. Helle, I'm sure that you can second that. I mean, we grow up in a society that's pretty balanced, but I know tons of women out there who just fight for their place every day, right? So I'm wondering whether that influences our passion for this, and also our will to sort of voice our opinion.
I think that in the Eventbrite sign up, I mean, I had like 60 signups and about half of the people are present here. But I think I think it was pretty balanced. I saw a lot of male names also. So
I will say that. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's a good question. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. There's a thread for me that is, if it's not the exact same thread, it's sort of adjacent to it. It's that I think the hardest part specifically when talking about issues like this, like diversity and inclusion related issues, or issues of race in the workplace, or gender biases or whatever else in the workplace, what I have found a lot is that even people who really want to do well with this, they don't know how to. Mm-hmm. And it freezes people up a lot. They don't know how to ask how to help with this. And maybe that's a factor here. Maybe there's some men who are like, I really want to be involved, but they just don't really know who to ask or how to ask or what to ask. Maybe that's giving them too much of an excuse or an apology. But someone was asking me about, do you try to change people's minds or any of that? And I don't. I've found that has never worked. I wish it would, but what I try to do is assume, without knowing, that people really want to do well with inclusion and diversity, and I try to give them strategies to do it, right? Like a thing that came up as an example, a thing I was thinking about was, you had asked a question that you'd like to have a diverse panel of speakers. Mm-hmm. And how do you invite, a Black person without it feeling like you're doing tokenism, right? Yeah. And that to me is a great question, because it's like, oh, well, here's someone who really wants to do well, but just doesn't know the strategy, right? Is a little bit afraid of what to do. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, invite more than one, so there's not a token one. Then it doesn't feel that way. Have a token white person instead of a token Black person. The other thing you can do is just be really open and transparent about it, right? Just say like, hey, I want to have representation across the board, so I'm going to be like very careful about making sure that there's a diverse panel. And then it feels, the other thing is to make sure that that person's getting the same thing everyone else is. So if you're paying speakers, pay all of them. Typical things.
Actually, there was one year that I had a male speaker who was very expensive, and after he took like most of my entire budget and my salary and everything else. And after that, I decided that I was not going to pay one male speaker that much ever again. So since then, it's been like I paid men 20% and women 80%. Sorry, guys. But, but I'm also getting a lot of, a lot of talk requests where men are like, if you're filled up with men already, or, if you'd rather give my spot to a woman or to a person of color or whatever, please do, but I just want you to consider my talk. So, I mean, people are thinking about it. It's great.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah. No, yeah. Okay, well, that's good to hear. I mean, yeah. I try to be diverse, I like to hear voices from different parts of the world, so it's not just skin color, it's like diversity, because we need, the world is like completely unified now, right? So we need to hear what they're doing in Singapore in design, and what they're doing in South America or South Africa we had this year, I mean, it's really great. I'm really proud of what my stage does. I think that we have a lot of good voices.
Yeah, agreed. You do a great job.
That's not what I meant, I'm sorry. But okay, so another question, pretty controversial topic. Patting myself on the back. Okay, pretty controversial topic. What is your take on people that identify as a different race from what they're born as? And can it be compared to being transgender?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I have a stance on it. I mean, I think that if what people identify as or what people identify as, and what's it for me to say anything about that? I mean, right. I'm sure it has been really interesting for a lot of people for me to say, I identify as Black. I have a hard time saying that right now. Growing up, I got a lot from adults, which was just super bizarre. I got a lot from adults that, being biracial, or they used to say mixed, which just, I do not really like that term. You must not fit in anywhere, right? You must not, it must be so bad. You must not fit in anywhere. And they usually weren't saying it to me about that. They were saying, like, I would be at a white friend's house and their parents would be talking about an interracial couple and be like, it's fine. I just feel so bad for the kids. If they have kids, those kids aren't going to feel like they fit in anywhere. And I'd be like, do I fit in with you? And they'd kind of, look a little sideways. And for almost the entirety of my life, I have felt like it's a gift because I fit in everywhere. Like I meet Black people and they're like, cool. Yeah, right on. I meet white people and they're like, cool. Yeah, right on. Growing up in Hawaii is such a melting pot. Everybody's something. So it's easy to get along everywhere there. Mm-hmm. But right now, honestly, the last 6 months is the first time in my life that I feel like I don't belong anywhere. Those of you, I think everyone's familiar with the racial injustices and strife and things going on in America today. And the thing is, like, I grew up in a Black family, but my mom never had to sit me down and tell me how to behave with the police and how to worry that I could be killed just for wearing a hoodie past 9 p.m. And simultaneously, I don't have to go and read books about my white privilege. I get it. I understand it. I know it deeply because I would spend, 8 to 12 hours a day in it. And then I'd go open the door and walk into a Black household and talk to my Black engineering grandfather who dealt with racial issues as an engineer his entire life. And so I don't really have a belonging there right now. And it just feels a little weird.
I'm sure that's what a lot of Black people are feeling now in the States, right?
I mean, right now, there's a great video of, I'll find it and share it around later. There's a great video of a sportscaster. It's like 3 or 4, it's a panel, and one of the guys is talking and he's just raging about, he's a white guy and he has a Black adopted son. And he's going through all of the things that his adopted son has had to deal with as a 17-year-old in America, dealing with all of this. And what's really striking is when they go from his face and they zoom back out to the rest of the panelists, there's 2 black panelists and 2 white panelists alongside this man. And the 2 black panelists are like, because they get it, they're just like enraged, they get it. And the white panelists are sobbing, just bawling, sobbing, like having to look away, taking their glasses off every few seconds. And it's just, you know, the black community gets it. They've been saying it for years. Go listen to rap songs from 25 years ago. None of this is new. But, you know, on the other side, it's a new thing, right? And so I'm like, yeah, I haven't experienced the same rage. I've never been pulled over just because of the color of my skin. But on the other side, I'm not bawling and crying because it's the first time I've ever heard this. Like, I know it. My cousins have been pulled over. My entrepreneur stepfather has had to deal with like an unending number of issues trying to get funding and whatever else, right? They're like, oh yeah, totally, give you funding. And then he walks in the room and it's like, maybe not, right? I've seen that for, how old am I? 40 something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, you know, when I think of, I moved away from the States when I was 15, and I mean, of course, that was a long time, and of course, it was a different situation, and, you know, I went to public schools, so, you know, it was, I don't know, but I've moved around a lot, so to me, people are just people, but I know that's not the case. However, you know, it's been brewing. And now that I look back, I'm like, okay, well, there's no doubt that it's been brewing ever since, you know, forever. So it's about time, actually, right? It's taken them a long time. It's taken people a long time to say, you know, this is it. We're done. No more patience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Said people are just people, you know, I used to lean on that a lot. I used to lean on like, it turns out everybody wants the same thing. Right? Everyone wants to love and be loved. Everyone wants to make some money, eat some good food, have some fun, right? Like their view on some of those things may be different, but everybody wants the same thing in general. But you have to think about where people, you know, maybe if they have the same finish line, everybody's got different starting lines. And it's about where you are in the culture, right? And like coming back to the tech culture, right? Like there aren't a whole lot of Black CTOs. And the reason why is they have a different starting point, right? Like my starting point is like just natural advancement, right? Never having to prove that I'm technical enough or whatever. Frankly, I'm not technical enough, right? Like luckily I found a company who views a CTO more as like the business leader who knows a little bit about technology, or okay, I know a good bit, but not like tons, right? I'm like, I have lots of holes in my knowledge on technology. And I think like, if you find a Black CTO, they're like Jackie Robinson, right? They're like the best of the best of the best of the best. And they had to be to get to that position. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, going back to Trina's comment, that's what women also are up against. I don't want to compare,
Absolutely.
you know, Black Lives Matter to anything else. And so, but it is, I mean, women do have to work harder, and they still do. But so, no.
Everything I just said about Black CTOs, put women in, and it's the same, absolutely the same deal.
Kind of, not always. I mean, it also depends. And like Trina said, you know, we're pretty privileged in Denmark. So there are a lot of things that, you know, I mean, that we wouldn't be saying the same if we were somewhere in, I don't know, you know, a different country. But
and in the intersection, find a Black woman CTO.
Exactly, right? Right.
Okay, because the question didn't get answered about the race versus trans. I do want to say, for as like an ally for trans voices, those are two very different things. And identifying and trying to be a part of a race of which you are not, and acting like you're an outsider trying to get on the inside of that, is very different than being a transhuman, being born a certain way and finding that through your journey. So just as in case anyone was curious, there's tons of information about it online. Feel free to Google as well, but those are two very different things.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you for chiming in with that.
Also, back to your comments, Eric, I remember Ethiopia Rap was on stage in 18, I think, from MailChimp, and she made an awesome talk and one of the things, and I keep thinking about that, she had a slide that said, you know, we're much more alike than different. So humans are, you know, we are so much more alike, and I don't understand how the color of skin can just be such a big differentiator, you know? It's true, we're all human, we have the same basic needs, there's no difference, you know, we all have a skeleton and we have, you know, a body and a heart that works. And
Yeah, you know,
yeah.
it's interesting. So I'm going to be Danish for a minute and like give you sort of like a harsh response back. While I totally agree with that, I also think it can get that that stance on things can maybe go too far into the other direction and like turn into I don't see color, right? And I think it's a lot better if we do see the differences, and we find a way to, instead of being scared of them and you know, downplaying them or even degrading them, we find a way to learn about them and respect them and honor them instead, right? Like what I said, how, you know, everybody wants sort of the same things. They want to love and be loved. Well, love in many cultures is displayed and observed differently. And saying we don't see color, I think, doesn't really pay honor to that. And so what I'd rather, instead of try to like homogenize everybody into the same thing, is I'd rather be in a place where everybody's able to be different, and those differences are brought together in a way that makes, like, lifts all boats, right? Like makes everything better for everyone.
Great point, thanks. All right, I have another question here. Do you ever feel guilty about your privilege? And then in the parentheses, this is the blunt tone Helen mentioned. I come from a place of deep respect, so please don't take offense. So the question was, do you ever feel guilty about your privilege?
I'm sorry, you broke up. What was it?
I'm sorry. Okay, the question is, do you ever feel guilty about your privilege? And then in parentheses, it says, this is the blunt tone that Hilla mentioned. I come from a place of deep respect, so please don't take offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't take offense to that at all. And yeah, I totally do. Oftentimes I feel guilty about it. You know, there's women who report to me who, you know, if you took out names and just put our resumes side by side, they're as qualified or, you know, maybe more for my job than I am. You know, I joined the company before them, and there's some other aspects of it like that. But yeah, oftentimes I do feel guilty, but I go to therapy. I swear by therapy. If you ever want to hear about why therapy is great, I will talk about it all day, every day. I have a phenomenal therapist. And guilt is an issue that we have run through a lot. And so anytime I feel guilty, I can hear her in the back of my head say, "What is guilt for?" And guilt is for when you've done something wrong. And in that case, I haven't done anything wrong. I may have gotten ahead based on something that someone else didn't have, but that's not on me, it's on others. And so what I can do to then deal with that is not do that same thing to other people. And so I try to find a way to take that guilt and say, okay, I shouldn't feel guilty about this because I am not wrong. I haven't done anything wrong. What instead I'll do is I'll take it and I will figure out a way to pay it forward or teach people about it or whatever else. So that's been my approach.
But isn't that something, I mean, to me, you know, getting older, I'm getting better at reflecting on things like this, getting better at saying, you know, okay, I'm getting emotional about some kind of thing that's going on, and you know, it takes strength to realize that, okay, I'm feeling guilty about something, but it's not something I did. Wouldn't you say that it's like, I mean, 15 years ago, would you have thought the same thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not. That's a great point. I don't know. 15 years ago, I wouldn't have had this 15 years ago I wasn't in therapy, so I wouldn't have had the ability to reflect on it quite that well. It's a good question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for it.
So it's either therapy or old age. I'm owning that one. So should we see if there are any other questions? There's some questions in the chat. I could just take a quick look here.
Yeah, someone mentioned to again follow up on the question about someone identifying as a different race than they were born. I've never heard of that either, actually.
Right.
That was a new one to me, but I think that, you know, it just relates to me because I feel like I have to explain that I actually am Black.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And when I had hair, that happened less. I looked like my buddy Colin Kaepernick up here.
You did?
I had a giant mound of curly hair. If you follow me on Twitter, that profile is actually my first grade picture.
I thought it was your son because it totally looks like your son.
He's got the same head of hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Told him to enjoy it now.
Oh. I think it's from your mother. I think it's something that's genetic from your mother. So, no, I was going to say that. Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of, you know, of course, I'm reading myself because my own experiences, because that's what people do, right? But, you know, I moved around a whole lot as a kid, and we would move like every year and a half, and it would be from country to country. So it's not even like moving houses. And then I was telling my life story to a colleague like 5 years ago, and he was like, "Your parents made you move so much, it must have been awful." And I was like, "No, it was a huge privilege. Are you kidding me?" You know, I learned so many languages. I learned how to adapt quickly. I learned how, you know, different cultures are all over the world. And, you know, we traveled all the time. And I was just so shocked at him thinking that it was not, you know, that it was something bad for me. And you were kind of saying the same thing before, you know, it's been good until like at least 6 months ago. It's been good for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that certainly my experience in Hawaii was really good for me. And, you know, I've not been around nearly as much as you have, but Hawaii to Georgia was a bit of Atlanta, Georgia. So the southeastern U.S., for those of you not super familiar with the United States, that's, I don't know, 3,000 or so miles apart. Southeastern United States is still probably the least progressive of America when it comes to race relations. Right. And then I went to a non-urban part of Atlanta. So I went to like closer to the country, very, very white area with a single Black mom. My brother's darker skinned than me. He's a little older than me. And just coming from Hawaii. So I got, you know, did you live in a grass hut style questions?
No.
And, you know, this was the 80s. So people should have known that it wasn't grass huts in Hawaii at that point. So I went straight from that to that environment. And, you know, I guess taught me some resilience. I went to college in Alabama, which is even less progressive and was a mostly white school. But, you know, college kids, at least at the time, I found it to be a little more of an open environment. So it was interesting.
What made you go to Alabama?
I wish I had some great story. It's just laziness. When I took the college entry test here, it's called the SAT here. You could pick what school you wanted your scores to be sent to. And I said Auburn because I knew it had good engineering, and they got my scores and sent me a letter back and said, "You've been pre-accepted. Check the box if you want to go to school here." And I was like, "I'm lazy. That's easy. I'll go to Auburn." I really knew nothing about it, but it was just, there we go. And you know, again, to talk about race relations in America. So there's a highway called Highway 85. We number our highways. On one side is Auburn University. On the other side is Tuskegee University. Oh. Which Tuskegee University is a historically Black college and university in Alabama. And so there was like a literal divide. White people live on this side, Black people live on that side. And, you know, at work, we work at a building called Ponce City Market that's on a street called Ponce de Leon Avenue in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And you know streets are old if they cross Ponce de Leon and they change names. So there's a street called Monroe that becomes Boulevard, and 2 or 3 others that change names. And it's because Ponce de Leon was the divide of whites and blacks in Atlanta, and whites and blacks could not live on the same street. So when you cross the street changes names for the racial divide. And it's just like, wow, that's something that's not lost on me, that, you know, I'm standing in a building at work, not now because I'm at home. And right, that building is actually on that street. And so you can look on one side and see the historically black part of Atlanta, and look on another side and see the historically white part of Atlanta. And you can still see remnants of certainly the economic divide.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. Very picturesque.
I babble. I don't think I answered the question.
I don't remember what the question was. I'm sorry. Oh, that's why you went to Alabama. That's all. I mean, yeah, that's all I was asking. Okay, I've got another question. You mentioned briefly the experience of joining the Dev Color Group, Development Color Group. How have you responded if people have expected you to prove you belong in their group?
I've never gotten someone who at least blatantly said to me that prove that you belong.
Really?
So how I would respond would I would just talk about my upbringing. I'd tell them about my mom. I'd show them a picture. You know, I've got this. I can bust out a picture of my mom any moment. You know, again, maybe it's the maturity of age or the therapy, but unless they're the ones who run the group, I would probably not feel like I needed their permission to be in the group. It would make me sad for sure. But I'd probably just refunnel that into, I'd find someone in the group who was positive about me being in the group and just rechannel it there.
Yeah. All right, I've got another question for you. Are you actively trying to change the awareness in tech regarding race or gender? If yes, could you tell how that's been approached and received?
Can you ask it one more time? You broke up just a little bit. Am I actively trying to change?
Of the awareness in tech regarding, you know, gender and color and race and.
I wouldn't say that I am. I am actively participating in what's going on at MailChimp around diversity and inclusion. We just hired a vice president of culture and inclusion. She actually started today, first day today. Second Black woman VP at MailChimp, so aces there. And I'm participating in that and trying to make the company I work at, you know, do better there. And I think MailChimp's doing great, actually. There's definitely some areas for improvement at the C-suite. I am the most Black person, so there's definitely some area for improvement. And we're headquartered in Atlanta, where the census would say more than 50% of the population is Black. So there's definitely some work to be done there. Also, we used to have many more women on the C-suite, but several of them have retired and moved on. So we have some work to do there. But we're aware of it, and we are trying to work toward change. And I'm trying to be a change agent there and help. Again, my approach is like, I just assume everybody wants to do well with it, and I try to give strategies to do well, right? So like, here are things that we could be doing or we should be doing better. And my main approach is so like specifically for technology at MailChimp, I want MailChimp to be a great place for diverse technologists to work, right? So I want Black technologists to feel like it's a great place to work, transgender technologists to feel like it's a great place to work, women in technology to feel like it's a great place to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like focusing on metrics that say it's a great place to work, like, are you getting advancement in your career? Are you paid equally? Those types of things is better than just saying X% is Black or X% is women or X% is whatever. because those percentages will climb if you make it a great place to work and you keep it a great place to work. But if you're just looking at those percentages and you're just like changing hiring practices and all of that, you'll have a revolving door if it's not a great place to work. And that's not really what anybody wants, right? We want to be able to hire the best people we can find, regardless, right? To your point, like best people, regardless of anything else. And if you're hiring the best people, I promise you'll end up with a diverse team. And if you create a great environment for diverse teams to work, you will end up with a diverse team.
You know, when this conversation comes up about hiring diversely or hiring women, I always get a man, like if I'm posting something on LinkedIn or something, there's always going to be that man who's like, you know, gender has nothing to do with it. I mean, why don't you just hire after, you know, capabilities or whoever's best or whatever, you know? And I'm always I have a hard time, or actually I try to ignore them, but you know, if you should retort to that, what would an answer be? You know, like my normal answer, I mean, I go into discussions about things like this on LinkedIn, but you know, if I'm having a chat with somebody, I'll be like, yeah, well, until it's like default, I'm going to keep focusing on having women speakers and people of color on my stage, right? But I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's best just not to engage, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough. I think it's it's certainly a fallacy that saying, you know, creating a diverse environment or, you know, trying to hire diverse numbers means that you specifically are gonna now you have no opportunities and you're gonna, you know, be on the outside. I guess I can see why people would jump toward that. But if people sort of are willing to calm down and take a step back and listen to the overall story, they ought to be able to get it. But again, maybe it's not a popular stance, but I just don't want to change minds on. I just don't think it's possible sometimes to change minds on that. And so just maybe don't engage and move on. I don't know. That's maybe sounds harsh or controversial or whatever. You know, I think you can tell the story about how adding diversity makes everyone better, right? And people will believe that or not. There's a bazillion studies that show it. Like it's to the point where it's no longer opinion, it's fact. There's just bazillions of studies that really show it. And so, you know, if someone's not going to listen to facts, there's probably not a whole lot you can do.
No, that's right.
Yeah. You don't have to get in an argument with them. Like you said, you can just be like, meh, I'm not going to engage, move on.
No, and you know, it's like that'll be the token white man.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
but just say something.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got another question for you. You were talking about an interview you did with, was it OpenView Partners? You and I had an email correspondence about this, where you spoke about, setting up like a team so individuals can support each other. Is that something you did at MailChimp or?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really just trying to set things up so that, you know, people feel safe, people feel like they're able to contribute and talk and share. Something we just did recently that I think is really great. And I honestly can't take credit for it. So, two senior directors, one named Sarah and a man named Jay, worked together to do this. So I basically said, within technology, there's 6 disciplines today that I need to be deeply connected to. I won't run through them, but it's just like, hey, these 6 disciplines are things that I need to be deeply connected to as the CTO. I need to share what's going on with the business, with the people in these disciplines, and I need to hear from them problems that I need to take back to the business, and we need to respond, to work back and forth. And so what they did was said, okay, what we're going to do is take the highest level leaders of those 6 disciplines and then have them designate a representative, and the 12 people then total will meet with you every 2 weeks, and you'll have we use Slack to do async communication. So we'll have a Slack channel to continue talking. And what they asked was, let's let's create a diverse set of total 12 people and help provide some access and some learning and some potential for advancement that people wouldn't normally be getting, right? And so, if one of the six leaders is from an underrepresented group, they can bring a white person, that's totally fine, right? But if not, then let's make it so that the entire group has representation across a diverse area. And it's been going extraordinarily well. I think we've had maybe 4 meetings now. It's pretty new. And, they're getting to know me. There's some people there who don't know me at all, and they just hear CTO and they think, scary person, whatever. So, I'm trying to do my best to not be a scary person and help people have tasks that are going to help the department be better. But if I'm meeting with them and that group of 12 people are all working to make the department better, then the department will get better in a diverse manner. And so that's one of the things we're doing to help people all work together and, feel some safety. And what we really focus on, like I said in that interview that I think you liked a lot, was never hide a problem. So we can say, okay, here's a problem and here's a thing we need to go focus on. And then we can take a subset of people and say, okay, you 3, you're gonna go work on making this problem better and bring it back to the group. And now we've got, diverse set of 3 or 4 little sub teams off working on making things better for the department, which is about 400 people today. Wow. So yeah, that's one of the approaches we've taken. Sarah and Jay, they get all the kudos for that. They've done a great job with it.
That's really cool. And I think, we're going to have to stop because it's been an hour. I can't believe it.
Wow.
And you are a super busy guy, so I don't want to take any more of your time. This has been so great. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was reading the Zoom chat. It looks like there's a really good conversation going on in the chat.
You're very welcome to go in and answer. You leave it up. I don't know what we can do. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for doing this. And there's definitely more discussion this. I mean, I definitely think you should still consider coming to Copenhagen or at least doing a talk.
Anytime. It is Katie and I's favorite city we have visited. So anytime.
You should come live here. I think MailChimp needs a department here. I'll be head of UX.
Nice.
Anytime.
Ben's not on this call, so we'll have
Say
to.
Again?
I said Ben, the CEO. He's not on this call, so we'll have to pass that message over to him.
Okay. Do that to you. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that you have to run.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I can stay on for a little bit if anybody wants to add. Thanks so much. I will talk to you soon, Eric, and I expect to see you in March.
Yep, sounds good.
Sounds good.
Well, we got to see what the state of the world is if I can travel safely, but
we'll see. Otherwise, online will definitely be an option next year.
Oh, sweet. All right.
Thank you. I'll stay online. I have more time.
I can stay online for a few minutes too. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, anybody have any questions? Anybody want to turn on the video and just ask a question?
I'm going to drop my LinkedIn in the channel.
That's because you're the scary CTO. Hi, Bailey.
Good to see you, Hella.
Good to see you.
Oh God. Hold on, we have we have the TV on with you streaming on the TV as well. So I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for a really interesting talk. I know that you said, you didn't really know where to go from, introducing yourself, but I think maybe as if you're looking for somewhere to go with that, like introducing it as a panel thing instead of as a, you talking about diversity would be a good way to do it. I think also, you could consider doing something like, talking about invisible diversities. So I asked a question anonymously on the Slido, and I'm gonna go to it real quick, where I was I asked any suggestions for creating an environment where people feel they can come out with invisible or masked diversity, including like your situation or queer or neurodiversity. And I think maybe having a panel along those lines could be really interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm writing this down. I've never heard that term or thought of that term. So that's
We had somebody speaking about neurodiversity this year. I'll send you the video.
cool.
Yes, please.
Yeah, invisible diversity is an interesting term.
Yeah, I don't know if I doubt I've made it up, but it's not like an official term I've pulled from anywhere. I'm thinking, I think maybe it's like, I know invisible disabilities are a thing, so maybe that's where that popped from in my mind. But yeah, I mean, I'm in a couple groups where they talk about having invisible disabilities and how to talk about that at work or where it's relevant. So having a panel with that kind of discussion would be really, really interesting to me anyway.
Bailey, I think we should schedule a talk.
We're long overdue, Hella, so I don't.
But I mean, it's kind of in this series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean I should talk?
I think I should interview you.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Maybe me and Jill. You remember Jill from just earlier? I think we should do. That would be very interesting.
Oh, that would be fun. Is Jill from MailChimp, Eric?
She's not. No, she runs a company called Underpin.company, I think.
Okay.
So.
That would be really fun. Okay. And there's something else also. I forgot to say that on September 29th will be the next of these series. I'll put that in an email to everybody, but September 29th at same time, 7 p.m. our time, Europe. And also I wanted to say thank you. Thank you to Jen for helping get this whole thing started. And thank you so much to Arika for helping out, and Brianna and Eric and his team. Thanks everybody. Does anybody else want to pop in on the video and ask a question or anything?
I think I might have a question because, hello, my name is Miriam. I work a lot in the public sector in Copenhagen, but what I see in, maybe not only in tech, but it's that the talent isn't there and they can't really be identified because they don't take the educations. So I think, and not as much in technology, but sometimes in the related industries, I think there's a great deal of work in order to get them accepted into the educations that they can get the jobs in technology. And I think that's at least something I'm thinking about, how to inspire young people to take educations that will get them somewhere. For instance, I worked in New York in architecture and I didn't meet any Black people there. It was just like there was one architect and they were like, David's Black, but nobody else was Black. And I think, I don't know if it's like that in tech. I think it started to be more diverse, but I think we have a lot of work in order to get diversity in all the educations as well. Yeah, but that's just something that I've been thinking a lot about. So it's not only in the hiring situations, it's also in the whole education system. Yeah, it's just more like a comment because I've experienced different things and it's always kind of interesting to hear different perspectives. So it's not really just a question. It's more like, I'm thinking about where the talent is and if they're specialized, like how do we stimulate this as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. All right. Obviously, what I said about everyone sort of having very similar finish lines, but different start lines. Like, I feel like, issues around education and access to things hugely fit into that start line, right? And I have no idea. I have no idea how to go and how to go and address that. So I definitely understand it.
Yeah. So I just think it's also one of the huge problems that you need to have the educations and stimulate it. But I know in Copenhagen they have an IT university and they didn't have any women there, and they actually started rebranding themselves and doing different ads and so on focused on women, and they actually changed it. So now they are accepting more women than male students. So I think it can work, but you just have to be very like structured about like how to get people to have the right educations to get them in the industry. Yeah.
So again, you have to be very conscious about selecting, right? Which
Yeah.
is super irritating because it's like being the opposite of being racist, right?
No, but they don't you don't even have the talent to accept them because they're not there. So I think that's the whole thing. You don't even have them applying for the educations. So you have to make sure that they know that they can have this education. Yeah. So,
sorry, I have to run now. Just had something come up. So thank you so much again for having me. Y'all definitely keep talking, but I'm just going to bounce out. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Bye.
Oh. So I will be sending out an email just, you know, with the link to, I'm going to put this up on our YouTube channel, this whole chat. And then I'll send out a few things. There's a couple of things that we were talking about. So links to those things. I'll put Eric's Twitter handle on there. He's really funny on Twitter. And what else can I put on there? Oh, I might just ask for a little bit of feedback on this because it's the first of these series and I would love to hear what you guys thought about it. I can see Lizette, you're down there in South Africa. Hello. You're also on my list of potential speakers, so we're gonna have to schedule a talk as well.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. How are you doing?
No, I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks. This was really interesting. And I mean, coming from South Africa, we have a very complicated history with race, obviously.
Yes.
And it's interesting. The story made me think just now of Trevor Noah, who's one of our more famous exports. I think he's now the host of The Late Show there in America. And he tells a very interesting story in one of his stand-ups because he is also mixed race. In South Africa, like he calls himself colored. And you get colored as an cultural group, which is mostly in Cape Town, and then you get people who just have parents of different races. So his father, I think, is white and Swedish, and his mom was black and a Xhosa woman. And he grew up, obviously, in South Africa during apartheid, so it was actually illegal that his parents had a relationship. So he talks about how people actually thought he was albino because he had such light skin, because they couldn't tell the truth that he had a father who was white, and how he also has this very complicated relationship with race. And yeah, I can't even begin to understand like what that entails. But yes, thank you for bringing speaker to talk about these topics, because I think it's very important to be aware of the conversations we're having, and yeah, to realize how it might affect other people. And I find it very interesting when Eric mentioned that when people realize that he's half black, they suddenly stop and think like, wait, what have I been saying? And it's terrible. That's not the society we should be living in, but it's great that we're talking about it and thinking about it and being conscious about it.
Yeah.
So yes, that's how I'm doing.
Yeah. Thanks. Sounds great. So people, you can all look forward to meeting Lizette in one of these interviews. It's going to be fun. Any closing remarks from anybody? No, it's been great seeing you. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks for your help, Ulrika, and thank you, Jen. And yeah, I guess that I will see you on the 29th. You'll all get an email from me anyway. Bye. Good night. Thanks so much for being here.